HYPE ETFs, post-strongest altcoin debut of 2026 as Inflow test Looms. Bitwise's hyperliquid ETF, ticker BHYP, recorded $431 million in debut trading volume on May 15th, the largest opening day of any altcoin ETF launched in 2026, according to a Crypto Slate report published May 17th. The product began trading 2 days after BTC and ETH issuers cleared a difficult week of outflows, putting BHYP in the spotlight as the next test of altcoin ETF demand. The 431 number is a debut volume figure, not a net inflow figure. Volume measures how many shares changed hands, including market maker activity. Inflows measure the dollars actually committed by buyers net of redemptions. The two often diverge sharply on the opening day of any ETF, and the inflow read is the metric issuers and allocators will be watching across the next several sessions. BHYP against other 2026 altcoin launches. Spot altcoin ETFs have arrived in a steady trickle since regulatory pathways opened earlier this year. Solana products began trading first, followed by a series of smaller cap launches that drew modest reception. BHYP's 431 NEP Day 1 volume tops them all by issuer reporting collected by Crypto Slate, though the bar is not high. Most 2026 altcoin ETFs debuted below $2 million in opening volume. For context, the BTC Spot ETF complex traded roughly $4.5 billion on its first day in January 2024, and the ETH Spot ETF group cleared just over $1 billion at debut in July 2024. BHYP's number is 3 orders of magnitude smaller. That is a function of HYPE being a single-asset altcoin product with a narrower investor base, not necessarily a sign of weak demand for the structure itself. The inflow test that matters. The post-debut window is where most altcoin ETF stories shift. Volume can be propped up by authorized participants, seeding the fund, and by intraday trading that produces no net dollars in. Net creations, which require redeeming cash for new shares, are the cleaner signal. Bitwise has not yet published next-day creation data for BHYP. The first credible inflow read will come from the issuer's daily AUM disclosures and from third-party trackers later this week. If BHYP shows multiple days of consistent positive creations, it will mark the first altcoin ETF outside of SOL and ETH to find sustained demand. If volume fades and creations stall, BHYP will join a longer list of altcoin ETFs that opened with attention and lost it within a fortnight. The hyperliquid backdrop HYPE is the native token of hyperliquid, the perp DEX that now accounts for roughly 90% of daily active users on perpetual decentralized exchanges. That concentration is part of the BHYP pitch. The underlying asset is tied to a protocol with measurable, dominant on-chain usage rather than to a speculative narrative. The other part of the pitch is the in-house staking that Bitwise structured into the ETF before launch, which routes staking yield back to fund holders. That feature differentiates BHYP from prior altcoin ETFs that left staking on the table, and it gives BHYP a yield component that comparable spot products lack. Whether that structural advantage translates into the kind of allocator demand needed to keep flows positive past the first week is the open question. ETF buyers historically reward simple, well-known underlyings. HYPE is neither old nor well-known to the wirehouse and RIA channels that drove BTC and ETH ETF flows, and educational lift on the underlying asset will sit largely with Bitwise's sales team in the months ahead. 3 reads that will define BHYP. 3 reads will define whether BHYP gets framed as a hit or a one-day spike. Day 2 through Day 5 creation activity available from Bitwise's daily disclosure and from independent trackers. The bid-ask spread on BHYP shares during regular hours, which signals how comfortably market makers are warehousing the product. Whether a second issuer files a competing HYPE ETF in the next 30 days. A competitor filing is usually a vote of confidence in the category. BTC sits at $78,020 as of May 17th, down 0.2% on the day and 4.3% on the week, while ETH at $2,083 is roughly flat after a 7.7% weekly slide. The macro tape is not helping altcoin demand, which makes BHYP's debut more notable, not less. A clean debut into a soft tape is harder than a strong debut into a rally.